welcome back. We are back. Episode, I don't no episode. We're not saying that anymore. Week 15. Recap the only game that was this week. We'll talk some other stuff here and there about state. We'll talk about anything more with the portal and rumors, and we'll talk about obviously the awards ceremonies that were yesterday and Friday. Um, and we'll talk about the Army Navy game, like I already said. But just want to say that again. It was a fun game. I'll get into my bad beat later on. But obviously with my buddy here, KB, how you doing?
We're doing good. Nice, relaxing weekend before we pick up starting next weekend with all the bowl games. Excited to see kind of how this all plays out. Heisman winner was expected, but some of the votes went kind of a weird way, so that's going to be fun to talk about. But I'm excited to kind of get in and talk about everything.
Yeah, me too. And I just want to shout out our TikTok for people not listening and just making comments about me being a Michigan fan. The top comment I saw today was me and you were both upset because we were mad Michigan wasn't playing Florida State. And like, obviously, I appreciate you looking at it TikTok, but you're not a true follower because I hate Michigan with a passion. But I just want to bring that up quick because it kind of pissed me off. I was obviously wearing a Gruff Sparty sweater, and I think KB and I would agree that Florida State got robbed, and I think their defense could have had a hell of a game against Michigan. It is what it is. I just want to bring it up one time, KB, before we jump into to that. Do you want to say anything about it? Or are you good?
No, I mean, we literally say in the clip, yeah, Texas should be playing Michigan, and everyone's like, you just don't want Alabama, and it's like Texas beat Alabama. I'm talking about the team that's on the field, at least 2 months ago, better than them. But no, it's funny, and it's just when you post
That's
stuff. Sometimes
short
Nat,
media, you know.
yeah, Nat was convinced that was going to be not a super, over the top one, and just posted
There's
it for it, and
200
it ended up
comments.
being it. Yeah,
There's only 100
it
likes
was
and 200
funny.
comments. People are just going crazy. Social media is toxic. Whatever. We're out there. If people want to, follow on TikTok, we appreciate everything. But let's just jump into some good news for us state fans. Even though basketball sucks, hockey is great. We're a hockey school right now. We hired our D coordinator, linebacker coach Joe Rossi from Minnesota. He's had some good numbers. I was looking at his scheme. He runs a interesting hybrid 4-3, or no, excuse me. He runs an interesting hybrid 3-4, kind of a 4-4-ish. He'll have three down linemen and a guy standing up a lot, and then he'll kind of switch it in and out. They were top, I think, 20 in a lot of categories, a lot of, I think, 10 or so draft picks the last couple of years. So I think this is a good hire. I think this is a move up for him. I would not say Minnesota to Michigan State is a lateral move. We've been to the playoff. Minnesota's kind of always been, middle of the road Big Ten, and I think with divisions going away, that might open up more doors for state because we all know the Big Ten West sucks, and that gives us more opportunity to play those teams. So I think it's a good hire. He also flipped a kid that is from Gaylord, Michigan. I think he was Defensive Player of the Year or something like that in the state. Linebacker, he got flipped yesterday from Minnesota to state, and then Rossi was officially hired today. So I don't know if there was some inside scoop with that. I would assume so. I think that's a good. He's a three-star linebacker, but up north kid, probably really tough. Probably played a lot of football on both sides of the ball, so I'm looking forward to see what he can do. Probably could be a tough, good linebacker, but I think this is a good hire, and now our staff is pretty much done. I was listening to a podcast earlier today. Still not sure about Hawkins and Barnett. Would really like Hawkins to be official, but from what I was listening to, it's not 100% sure yet. But the coaching staff is pretty much done and hired it from what I can think right now.
Yeah, that's good news, Dave. Minnesota, you have to take some of their stats with a grain of salt
Yep,
because they
that's
are also playing in the Big Ten
I
West.
agree.
They're playing against quarterbacks who can't throw the ball. So there is something there, but Minnesota presents a lot of problems. I think when you look and you kind of see what Jonathan Smith has, Minnesota has had really good defensive talent the last handful of years. They haven't been loaded with stars, but they developed really good. Tyler Newman's their safety, and he'll probably go in the first two rounds of this year's draft. And they've had just a ton of guys roll through there, especially in the secondary, that have been playing extremely well. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. One side note to that, because you brought up the recruit, Michigan flipped a guy that was going to go to USC. I think he's from Pennsylvania. He's a three-star, but he's like 6'3", so that's really interesting. Michigan's done a really good job of developing three-star guys over the course
That used
of
to
their
be
winning
us. That
streak
that
here.
used to be our bread and butter.
Yeah, Michigan has had, they get their 4 stars. They have maybe 1 or 2 5 stars on the roster, but they're really looking at developing 3 stars. Chris Jenkins, who's a monster, is a 3 star. Mike Sainristil, who's an absolute dog, was a 3 star coming out of school. and other guys like that, and even like Mason Graham, who walked on the field as one of the better players
Yep.
starting. And it's about development, and it's also like stars aren't everything. Obviously, they're super important, but it's your development. And recruiting sites misses. There's thousands upon thousands of kids in this country. You're not going
Yes.
to hit everyone. Um, it's about that work ethic they can put in when they get to the school and kind of the fight that they have in them. So it's always fun to kind of see 3-star guys, especially that flip this late in the portal, especially at a Big Ten West or Big Ten recruiting battle between USC. But outside of that, Dave, anything else we want to talk about? The portal is kind of silent, but you want to kind of.
McCord and Fleming went to Nebraska
Mm-hmm.
officially. I mean, Aiden Childs was on campus was with the tight end. Nothing's official yet. My assumption is he's going to come here. Malik Carr is in the portal. Glover is in the portal. He was a receiver. So, guys jumping in a little bit later, but maybe they talked with the coaches, and the coaches were like, hey, we wouldn't be mad if you stayed here, but if you want to look at your options, feel free. I think Jonathan Smith seems very candid and very straight up, so I'm assuming he's going to do that with the guys. And like we talked about in the last podcast, maybe they're saying to them, you're not really going to have a spot here. I doubt you say that to Malik Carr because Malik Carr is a freak. If he has a good work ethic, I think he got sat this year a little bit because he was late to practice and stuff. So maybe that's something he figures out. Maybe he goes somewhere else. Either way, good for him. But looking forward to Childs committing soon, hopefully, and all this craziness that I listed last week, all these quarterbacks in the portal. I think it's going to be interesting. It doesn't officially close until January 2nd. So we'll keep our eyes and ears on the ground for everybody here, and we'll make big announcements, obviously, during pods and retweet and tweet stuff out. But we can jump into the Army-Navy game. Army wins 17-11. Um, really bad beat for me. I had the under in Army to cover 2.5, which they did, and the over/under was 27.5. 17 plus 11 is 28. Um, Great game. I mean, this is an Army-Navy game. Army was kind of dominating until the end, and it got a little bit nutso. They got a stop on the one, and then they decided to take a safety, and the under was dead, and it really hurt my gut. That's a bad beat. I was probably going to make, 20, $30, and I don't know why you don't just run a QB sneak, but obviously you probably don't want anybody to get hurt, so the quarterback took a shotgun snap, waited a second or two, and then, walked out of the back of the end zone for the win for Army. Fun game. Looked like the cadets and the midshipmen were having a good time in the stands. It's always a fun game to watch. And obviously, old school running game here. And there was a good amount of passes. Army threw the ball 26, or Navy threw the ball 26 times, Army 14. So they did throw the ball around a little bit. And, I thought Army kind of dominated till the end, where Navy kind of made it a little interesting. And then the under got, a really bad beat there at the end with the safety.
Bad beat, but it was also a lucky bad beat in the sense that they got to stop on the 1 yard line to begin with, which is like you
True.
stop Navy from the 1 yard line, like that's super
They had no
impressive.
timeouts, and they ran a QB sneak. It was really interesting. It was fourth and goal, too.
Yeah, yeah, it was 4th and goal from the one, and they got the stop. Outside of that, it was kind of a tale of two halves. Navy really struggled to move the ball. Lavatai, their quarterback, he was basically the only one that could run it. I remember watching like 2 or 3 possessions where it was basically him just like taking a drop step and running a QB power with the running back leading up in there. He had 74 on the ground, 174. The difference in the game was the fumble return for a touchdown. That was the 7 points that Army scored on defense, turnovers. Always in these game, whenever you can steal possession, especially return it for a touchdown. That's one of those things that can change the momentum. Navy tried to fight back late, right? Had 11 points and could have put up 19 or 18 points in the fourth quarter, possibly.
Yeah.
It would have been a miraculous comeback. But just overall, it was really, really crazy environment. It was a really fun time. I hope that they keep moving it. I saw they posted a picture of them at the Rose Bowl for this game back in like 1984. I think that would be really fun. I also think I saw them in Chicago. I think that would be fun, kind of like move it around. Someone brought up the fact of possibly move this around to some of the bigger cities, and not just keep it primarily on the East Coast, even though these are our East Coast teams, just kind of spread out, because anyone's going to come and everyone's going to try and attend this game if it's in a town near them. But it's an awesome spectacle.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of overshadowed it on that day is Shohei Otani's massive contract,
Yeah.
which we're not going to necessarily focus on that, but that was one of those crazy things that like I spent like 20 minutes looking at that, and I look up at the game, and I'm like, oh, what's happened here in the fourth? But overall, really fun game. really hard fought battle. There were some creative pass plays. There was a handoff pass, a pitch pass. But Dave, anything else to kind of add?
Did you see that? I don't know if it was a punt, and it looked like it hit Navy's foot.
I
Uh,
missed that.
Army recovered it right away. I don't think they called it, but it was just a play that could have got reversed. No, not much else to watch. I do, or to say, I do like the idea of maybe moving this around a little bit. I think I was looking at Soldier Field today. Obviously, the Lions are playing and they lost, but Soldier Field's in a weird spot, and I just wish it was in a better spot because like there's like no tailgating around. Obviously, I'd love to go to this game. This would be awesome. The flyover and just there's just more respect I think for both teams, and it's America's game, and yeah, it'd be really cool to see it in the Rose Bowl, and obviously there's plenty of stadiums in this country, so it would be cool to see it move around. Obviously, it's usually played in Philly and D.C. and New York. I can't think of any other places where it's really been played.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to see it bounce around a little bit. There's plenty of stadiums, plenty of people would want to go. Obviously, I don't know how travel would go when it comes to the cadets on both sides. Obviously, if you saw game day at all, I think Navy's I don't know if they're called midshipmen yet or cadets, but they slept like it was like a banquet, not a banquet hall, but like I don't know, a center, and they just had a bunch of cots and shit. Obviously,
Yeah, I
they
saw that.
probably don't give a shit, but a lot of people are like, I could not do that. So maybe that's how they do it on the road. Obviously, there's probably plenty of money in the budget, considering it's part of the military, so it probably can't be done. I like the idea, KB. I'd like to see that stuff from 1984 at the Rose Bowl. It's probably pretty cool. But no, I got nothing else to say. Fun game, bad beat with the over there, but obviously Army did stop them at the end, so either way, it was probably going to go over. Fun game. Looking forward to this one next year already. It's a long time away, and we got to bitch and moan about our teams, but this one is just a game that everyone kind of enjoys. But we'll jump to the next topic, and that's going to be awards. Heisman ceremony was last night. I didn't really watch it because it's a whole hour of bullshit, and the ceremony pretty much the last 5 or 10 minutes is the only thing that really matters. Obviously, we had Bo Nix, Penix, Harrison Jr., and the eventual winner, Jaden Daniels, which was I think we all thought was going to happen. I think he was very deserving, like 3,400 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards, probably like 50 total touchdowns. Hardly any interceptions, so good for him. I did see somebody tweet that he might have been like the worst Heisman pick, and that's just people trying to get follows and clicks. I think that's a dumb take. I don't know if there's a really bad, maybe if there's a really bad year, there might be a bad Heisman, but I think that's a bad take. I think he's very deserving, and that's just dumb to say.
Yeah, in kind of what we saw in what I told you happened. Bo Nix and Penix split a lot of the vote between the both of them. Jaden Daniels was clearly number one, but if Bo Nix wouldn't have been a Heisman finalist or no one else in the Pac-12, because you see how the SEC voted and they, that part of the country all voted for him, obviously.
Yeah,
Uh, there was some opportunity there for one of those two to win it because if their combined total was higher than his individual total, which is always interesting to see. Jaden Daniels put up some huge monster numbers against bad teams, and he did a good job in the rest of his games. I know people want to point out his record, but they lost the Ole Miss game because his team let up 40 points, or they lost the Ole Miss game because they let up 50 points, 60 points.
a
They
lot.
lost the Bama game because they let up like 40 points. They lost all these games because of their defense, not because of him. They were only in games and only winning the games that they did because of him. He was very dynamic with his arms and his legs all year. It is something that's interesting, though. All three quarterbacks that won this year or that were nominated this year are all older guys, are all in their 20s. Developed 5 to 6 years as a starter, 7 years as a starter in Bo Nixon's case,
Right.
and so that kind of makes it an interesting little wrinkle here because it's like I'm not as impressed. Maybe that's why it kind of feels, and it's like we saw Jaden Daniels have a college career.
Yeah.
We saw him go at ASU. We saw him beat State as a true freshman in a rowdy crowd. I was there. Dave was there. We saw him the next year play okay. The next year after that was like, oh, it's his junior year. He's going to take a leap. He didn't really do it. Last year he played okay, and then it's this year, and it's like, God, we've already seen so much of him that it doesn't feel like a send off. Almost in the opposite way of Joe Burrow, because like he was the same age, right? He was a fifth year. Maybe Jaden Daniels has one more year, but he didn't play at Ohio State. So the first time you were introduced to him was his above average season at LSU, and then he skyrocketed. So that's
True.
definitely a reason why it feels like, oh my God, what's this winner? And we saw Penix have a career at Indiana. We saw Bo Nix have a career at Auburn. So we already saw these guys. They've been in our lexicon. So we don't think about just this year. We think about the 3 years we've already watched them play
Yeah,
college football,
that's the
where
truth.
they've stunk it up at times and they played good through the injuries without it. So I think that's part of the reason why um, that it kind of feels like that. But very deserving winner. On a side note, the too many people have votes, and the voting
Absolutely,
system sucks. I
absolutely.
think a simple solution: each conference gets to nominate two people that can be voted, all Power Five, because no one outside of the Power Five ever wins it, and we're going down to
Unless it's
four.
like video game
No,
numbers. Like
no, it doesn't even matter.
even if somebody's like Barry Sanders numbers, they wouldn't get a vote.
He was at OK State.
I know, but I'm saying like if somebody had those kind of numbers at
All right, and then
Tulane,
one group of five, someone will do it, but each conference can
sure.
nominate two players, maybe through the media, and then that's eight people. Eight people can get voted on to win the Heisman because like J.J. McCarthy received the first place vote. Blake Corum received the first place vote,
Shouldn't
and
have.
it's just like you don't do your job. Like that's not your job. Like they're they shouldn't even be in third place.
Yeah.
I could see a case for maybe voting for Corum because he has so many touchdowns, but Ollie Gordon has been much more impactful, much more explosive, much more important to his team, and just doing that is a disservice. It makes it feel less
It's like I'm gonna be
important.
prideful and vote for my guy. It's like no, like it's a terrible take. I would agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah, and I mean, it just like there's names on there, and it's like, why are these guys receiving? How is it possible for these people to be receiving votes? And
You could have
I
said
think too many people have the ability to vote too. Like, you don't need every single media member. Like, you need to get 100 trusted guys in a room, and there's all these nominations from these conferences, and then from there you pick. Because it's too much chaos right now. There's too many people receiving votes. There's too much stuff happening kind of on the back end that influences this so much that changes these. If this was a close race, it could have completely changed it.
yeah. And if Jordan Travis is that important, obviously to the playoff committee, then he should get a vote. Top three at least, because his team lost the playoff because he got hurt. So I would throw him up there too. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I saw the picture of the votes, and obviously I'm more of a state Twitter person, so a lot of people are talking shit about that. It's a disservice, like you said, and it's just dumb. Yeah, I don't know how we fix this because all these guys that have votes are beat writers for their given team, and obviously they're having late nights, writing for Michigan State at an Indiana game or something like that, and they don't watch highlights. I mean, we don't even watch all the games, KB, but we might watch more highlights than these guys that have votes, which is kind of crazy to think. Yeah, so maybe I understand voting for your guy and have a little bit of pride in your team, but like JJ and McCorum, even though they're decent years, obviously Michigan wins a certain way compared to how Jaden Daniels carries a team to win a game. So um, I don't know if we can ever fix it, but they shouldn't get a first place vote. I think Jaden Daniels should have won it, as he did, and the other guys that were there were deserving. You could even have swapped out Harrison for Ollie Gordon if you want to have another discussion about maybe a running back getting in there, but they never do anymore. But we're just going to go through all the other awards and maybe have a discussion if we want to through each one, but I'll just go through them, KB, and feel free to interrupt.
Yeah.
Walter Camp, Player of the Year, Jaden Daniels. Davey O'Brien, Jaden Daniels, which I kind of find a little surprising because it's best quarterback, and he's more of he could be a dual threat guy. Do you think anybody else should have got this? Maybe Penix?
No, because I think now in the lexicon of quarterback, running is the trait. At minimum, it's escaping the pockets, extending plays,
Yeah.
and if that extension of the play, because a lot of Daniels, I mean, he runs some in structure runs, but a lot of his damage is escaping, and that's quarterbacking. That's like down to earth. That's what people back in the '80s, like people who really love Jim Harbaugh, like that's how Jim Harbaugh ran around. That's what Fran Tarkenton, like that's how those guys played. Is they were scramblers. But like instead of just scrambling the throw, these guys can now scramble and then be a linebacker and then go for 80. And so I think that's all of quarterbacking now. So I don't have any problems with it. I think Penix is by far a better pure passer.
Yeah.
Daniels had a lot of guys running wide open, like an 80-yard bomb when you threw it 40 yards and there was 15 yards or 10 yards of separation is not necessarily Oh wow, that was so impressive.
I think that might be
But
a new stat. I don't know if we talked about it or heard it on a podcast, but I think it's called like air yards or something like that.
mhm.
That might be a new stat that we see down the road in the future. It's just more of a stat about how far the ball traveled before, obviously, the receiver got yak yards after catch. So I would love to see that as a new stat down the road.
Yeah, just to describe kind of what that all looks like. And I mean, there's a ton of stats that you can use, and sometimes yak is part of the quarterback too, right? Leading a receiver leads you to having better yak, putting it in places where you can extend it, but it's also like a lot of screens, right? Can
Breaking
75-yard
breaking
touchdown off a
tackles,
screen.
yeah,
Yeah, the receiver's ability instead of the quarterback.
yeah.
Definitely.
We'll keep going through the list here. Johnny Unitas Golden Arm, best upperclassman QB, Jaden Daniels. He made out pretty well. Maxwell Award, best player, Michael Penix. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's a weird one for
It
me.
really is.
I
I
don't
feel like
know
that's a Jaden.
who.
That should be to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I don't know who's voting and compared to the other awards, but it's like this guy won the Heisman, this guy won the best quarterback, this guy won the best upper level quarterback, and then best player is very weird. When I saw that, I was like, oh, did Penix like is I saw that because that comes out Friday, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw that and I was like, oh, is Penix gonna win the Heisman?
Mm-mm.
But that also could be because votes may be more split.
Oh yeah.
Because you said that was just best player, right?
Yeah, it just says Maxwell best player. I'm looking at USA Today.
Yeah, I wonder like how the voting broken down if there was more defensive players, so that maybe took away from Jaden
Oh.
Daniels. If
Maxwell usually
that,
goes to offense, but I think it's over like every player.
yeah,
Next one is Blitnikoff, which was actually really close in voting. Marvin Harrison Jr. won. I think Neighbors was second, and he lost by a vote. And I'm assuming Rumadonze got third. I didn't look at
yeah.
the true list, but those are my top three in my head. Numbers wise, I'd probably give this to Neighbors, but Harrison got it.
I mean, both of the other two guys were playing with people that are Heisman finalists, and Kyle McCord had to transfer.
Well, he didn't have
So
to;
like,
he chose to.
well, he was getting pushed out because they were going to bring a guy in. So obviously, the other two are going to get drafted most likely in the first round of the NFL draft, if not the second, only because Penix's injury history. And
True.
the other guy is, redshirt junior or redshirt sophomore that's now not at his place he was playing. I mean, I think that if we kind of go off of who had the best production, we would go with Neighbors. But if we go on a guy that teams have to game plan around more and make it more difficult for, I think we go to him who put up great stats. He just didn't his team didn't throw the ball as much as
True.
LSU. He had more receptions, more targets. Daniels put up ton more yards than um,
McCord.
McCord. So I think they didn't have a bad way to go there. I think either of those two would be wonderful
Both
picks.
all
They're both
three,
really,
all
really
three
good.
are deserving. I would say Dunze took over
Yeah,
games at times as well. So all three are good picks. Harrison gets the edge by a singular vote. That's what I heard. Doak Walker, best running back, or Ali Gordon the second. I think we would all agree that's the right call. He had the most rushing yards. John Mackey, best tight end. Brock Bowers, we discussed earlier this year. We both agree that he's probably one of the best players overall. Any thought? No thought. I think you would agree, KV. Outland Trophy, best interior lineman. Trevondre Sweat, I think, from
yeah,
Texas.
he's the Texas guy.
Yep, he's really good. The Bronco Nagurski, best D line. Xavier Watts, Notre Dame. I don't know much about this one, KB. He had
Yeah,
seven. He had 7 picks though. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what USA Today says. Like,
Xavier Watts. Yeah, because that's for best DB,
oh,
right?
defensive player. Sorry, I said.
All right,
I,
yeah, he was defensive lineman because I was like interior.
but
Yeah, no, he was really really good. He was the catalyst for Notre Dame's defense. Like 80% sure he's a Northwestern transfer.
he could be.
Um, but overall, yeah, that guy was really dominant. I watched him a good amount in the OSU game.
Oh,
But
okay.
that defense for Notre Dame was really really tough.
Yes. Chuck Benderek Award, best defensive player. Peyton Wilson, North Carolina State. I was actually watching the Herbie Awards, and he picked him as well for best linebacker. He was all over the place. He had 138 tackles, 6 for loss, 6 sacks, 3 picks, and he's just kind of one of those guys that flies under the radar at a middle of the road ACC team, and he was all over the place. Just a little, a white dude that's a really good linebacker with a name like Peyton Wilson. That's what you expect. He was really good. He also won the Butkus Award, best linebacker, same guy. Lombardi Award went to Leatu Latau. I think I said that
Hmm.
right. He was a tank at UCLA. I was watching highlights. He was also on the Herbies, so those are Kirk Herbstreit's awards for context. He had 21 and a half tackles for loss, 13 sacks, and they had the Bruins allowed the fewest rushing yards in this season. So, impressive defense for UCLA.
Yeah, and just to correct myself, Xavier Watts was at Notre Dame all 4 years. He had
Mm,
7 picks after having zero in the previous 3 seasons.
peak.
Really impressive by him. And then back to Latau. He was really good. I mean, he might have ended Shador's season from like a hey, I can actually continue to complete passes because he was in the backfield every single snap against them. That UCLA defense was really ferocious.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Dallas Turner didn't get more buzz. He's had a really impressive season, and some of his pass rushing snaps have been taken away because they have two other really good pass rushing guys at the outside linebacker slash edge position for them. But shout out to Latau. That's incredible. I'm excited to kind of see him continue his development in the NFL.
Yeah. He's a monster. He's a tank. Jim Thorpe Award, Best Defensive Back. Trey Taylor, Air Force. Shout out Air Force once again. He picked out 3 passes. He had 1 pick-six, 71 tackles, and I think this might be the first time an Academy player's won this award. I saw something about it on Twitter. I can't remember what the actual snippet was, but impressive to see an Academy guy win an award like that. You'd love to see it. The Paul Harnug Award, Most Versatile Player, Travis Hunter, Colorado. I see it. He played both ways. He had 721 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Nobody else is going to do that, so I think he's pretty deserving. Anybody else come to mind, KB? I really can't think of anybody that's might fit that one.
Because like versatility is so weird because like the only way you could kind of do something like that is if you had maybe a like a linebacker play fullback, I guess would be the only equivalent outside of a DB.
Yeah,
I'd have to look up past winners to see what that award is kind of stood for, because maybe it's like versatility even in like, hey, I can line up on inside and outside and stand up possibly. But just overall, I feel like that's almost a more DB centered one because DBs can do a lot more, especially like safeties and stuff. Outside of him being a terrific cornerback.
yeah.
That's awesome for Travis Hunter.
Like some past winners would be like Devontae Smith. Maybe he was like a kick return, punt returner. Rondale
Hmm.
Moore, 2018. Saquon Barkley, 16 was Peppers. 15 was McCaffrey. So like a lot of guys that probably do punt return, kick return. Maybe play a little bit, not much on defense, but like
Yeah.
Shaq Thompson, Washington, 2014. So just a lot of guys that kind of do kick return, punt return. So not a lot of guys like Travis Hunter that actually play both ways, which you don't see a lot anymore in college football.
Yeah, you really don't. Really impressive by him. I know he got off to a really fast start. This is his going into his junior year, right? Going into his draft eligibility year. He needs to add weight.
Yeah, he's
I
not. He's
know
not big at all.
I know his frame isn't very large, but he looks like on the low side of 165. Now he's a freak athlete, but he
He's
needs
gonna
to
get.
add some.
He's gonna get
Yeah,
bent
he
in
needs to just
half in the
add.
NFL.
Yeah, like he needs to go on like a bulking plan. Like I don't even care if you look a little bit slower next year, just to protect yourself because you're joining the Big 12 next year. Um, it's going to be tough sledding. I know Colorado's going to be good, but you're playing that many snaps.
Their
It's
schedule
really
next
difficult.
year is really hard, by the way. And,
Again,
and they open with North Dakota State, which could be a fun one, because they're a really good FCS powerhouse team. I would love to see that be a close game.
yeah, but that's awesome for Travis. I mean, he was the number one overall recruit. Went to an HBCU to follow Dion. Now is at Colorado along with Dion, and it's really awesome to see. I don't know how much he'll play both ways next year. Maybe he decides, hey, I want to be a receiver. Maybe I want to be a DB. But it'll be interesting to see how they handle his snaps next year as he continues to progress and continues to grow in the game.
Yep. We'll go jump into back to the list of awards here. Remington Trophy Best Center, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Obviously not much about a center. I love this one. Lou Groza, Best Kicker, Graham Nicholson from Miami, Ohio. Go Maction. He was 26
Yeah.
for 27, 35 and 30 for 36 on extra points. I don't know if a kicker had that many tries, but that's a hell of a year for any kicker, in my opinion. I don't care if you're Mac or elsewhere. And the Ray Guy Award, Best Punter to Torrey Taylor for Iowa.
Yeah, clearly.
Easy pick here. He punted 11 more times than the next closest punter. That's just how bad. I think I heard something. It might have been, I don't remember. It might have been the Barstool guys, but I was the dead last in offense and first in punting. So obviously this guy did something.
Yeah, by yards.
Yeah, by yards. Obviously, I'll say this again. He punted 11 more times than the next closest punter, and is on the verge of a record NCAA record with 4,119 yards punting yards. His average was 47.9 yards per punt, with the third best in the nation. But obviously, this guy punted all the fucking time because Iowa's offense was terrible.
I think they had 1,000 more punt yards than scrimmage yards this year.
That's just what else do you say? That's just funny.
Yeah, shout out to Tory Taylor. I mean, they might be like a six-loss team without that good of a punter. Like,
Yeah,
but
obviously it
God,
makes a
Iowa's
difference, but
tough.
that's crazy. He punted 11 more times than the next closest punter. But to the next one, probably my favorite award. Shout out Kenny Willikis, who was a GR guy, North Point Christian guy. He won this award, the Bullsworth Trophy. Also, a good story about Bullsworth. He tragically died way too young, but it's the best walk-on or best player who began their career as a walk-on. This goes to Cody Schrader, Missouri, and KB and I talked about him last episode. Great running back for Mizzou. He had 1,499 yards, so just a yard shy of 1,500. Third best in the nation when it comes to rushing, 13 touchdowns. He walked on to Mizzou in 22 after playing for a Division II team, I think Truman State. So shout out Truman State. Shout out Cody Schrader for being a hell of a running back, hard-nosed running back. And always loved this trophy. It's a good list. I know Baker's on here. I know, like I said, Kenny Willikis, who was a great DN for State, and now Cody Schrader joins that list. And I think there's a movie. I don't know if it's called Walk On or something else, but it's about Bolt Burlsworth, and it's a good story overall. I don't know if you got anything else to
Yeah,
say about that one,
yeah.
KB.
No. Walk-ons are some of the best things. They're more than just this award too. There's a lot of things walk-ons do that we don't really see. I mean, a lot of walk-ons have secondary jobs on top of playing football, on top of going to school full time to help pay for school. Some walk-ons, their parents might be loaded and they just do it because they want to like be a
Yeah.
varsity letter at whatever school they go to. But they're still absolute dogs. Walk-ons in general. They're on the practice team. They're on the scout team. They're getting your team ready week in and week out for looks. So, it's awesome to recognize them as starters, but, at the same time, you got to look at what they do outside of that. I know this award is just to highlight them in general, but it's absolutely crazy what they do, in the midst of college football, what they can bring to a team. Some of the, best schools in the country have the best walk-ons, right?
Yep.
They have guys that can compete with them in practice, and there's a reason for that because they want to, rep that school and say that they were there and played college football there.
Yeah, so some past winners, just to get some names out there. Stetson Bennett last year. Kenny Willikis, like I said, from State. Hunter Renfro, Clemson. Luke Falk was pretty good at Washington State. Baker won it back-to-back. Jared Aberderis, that's a Big Ten name. He was at Wisconsin. And Matt McGloin, another Penn State guy. So
When,
that's
when did that start? Because J.J. Watt would be one of those guys
2010
too.
is the first one I see in this list here.
Yeah, J.J. Watt would be one of those guys too, which is crazy to think
Uh,
about. Well, like I don't think he won it because it was before the award maybe started, but he, I mean, he was he got a scholarship to CMU. They wanted him to play tight end. He hated it. Went to Wisconsin to play D end as a walk on.
yes, correct.
Pretty famous story. So
Yeah, I've heard the story. I'm trying to just looking at other finalists to see if I any other big names here quick. Jordan Kovacs, safety, Michigan. That was in
yep,
2012. I don't know if you know that name.
Kovacs. Yep.
See anybody else here? Baker, which I said already. Rodrigo Blankenship, kicker. He's on.
Ooh, kicker.
He was a finalist, and Aiden O'Connell last year, who was really good. And Drake Stoops was a finalist this year, which I can't believe he was a walk-on. His dad was obviously the coach there. Any other
Probably got free
awards?
tuition, so he didn't need the scholarship.
What
But
is there's only three more to list. Nothing crazy. The William B. Campbell Trophy, top scholar athlete Bo Nix. Werfel Trophy, community service Lad McConkey, Georgia. Home Depot Coach of the Year, Callan DeBoer. Makes sense. Undefeated team going to the playoff. I think a lot of guys could be Coach of the Year, considering where they are. I think Brom could be up there. Even you could put Harbaugh. You could but he didn't really coach a lot of. He
Harbaugh only
didn't coach a
coached
lot of
6 games.
games.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of teams that are like undefeated. Norvell, whatever from Florida State could be
Yeah, Jay
here.
Norvell.
The rise to the top for him. There's probably a couple other guys I'm missing, but Sark maybe. But yeah, a lot of guys are deserving this award. But Kalen DeBoer is in his second year at Washington, and they're in the playoffs, so kudos to him. Top assistant coach went to Phil Parker, Iowa D coordinator, which I thought we might have get for our D coordinator at Michigan State, but we didn't. But that's all the awards that I see on this list. Any other thoughts, KB? I know we kind of hit them all. We had some conversation about a couple here. Any other thoughts?
Um, The only thing is, I really wish that Sharon Moore would have won Assistant of the Year. He had to coach the final 3 games, toughest games of the season, along with handling his O line duties, along with being the offensive coordinator, and that's really, really hard to do overall. So that's something that deep down, I wish he would have gotten. I get Phil Parker, um, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country with what he has to work with from an offensive standpoint, from a talent perspective. But it's just one of those things that you kind of look at, and you do wish that an opportunity like that for Sharon Moore to win it, with everything that's kind of come down on him, right? We can talk about, well, the program brought it onto himself. I mean, Sharon Moore had to coach games this year that he would have never thought probably in another 5 6 years, and or unless Harbaugh leaves, that he would ever had to deal with. But no, overall, is a really, really cool thing to kind of see all these awards, guys getting awarded. One of the fun things is like Michigan wasn't in really any of these finalists for players.
Nope.
They weren't in any of the finalists. I think they had one All American and Zach Zinter for offensive line, and Blake Corum maybe made second team. So it just is like Michigan has such a group approach to all of this. They're next man up. I think some individuals could be putting up better numbers, defensively by playing more snaps because Michigan rotates in 8 guys on the defensive line. They could have put up more stats, maybe in the backfield if they gave Corum only the carries, or Edwards, who only has half of Corum's carries, so it's kind of 2/3 to Corum. Or JJ, if he requested to throw the ball a lot more. But all the guys are pretty selfless, and they're not worried about these awards. They're worrying about winning championships, and hopefully this year is the year they can at least get to the game and beat a really tough Alabama team. But I'm excited to break down bowl games Thursday.
Yes, it'll be
You
fun.
know,
It'll be a little long probably, but we're going to go through all the games and Bowl Mania. I think the way we'll do it, KB, I was just thinking about it, is maybe we just do a Bowl Mania each on ESPN, and then we just kind of go through that, or we could have our own pool. I've got to look at it a little bit more, but it's probably going to be the easiest way to track everything.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. We're not tracking
we're
out
not
like
doing confidence. We're not doing spread. We're just going to do straight up pick 'em, which is the
yeah.
easiest. Um, I just want to bring up too, keep your eye on the portal. Obviously, I just want to look up any news quick on three. There's nothing new breaking. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel's going to Oregon, but from Oklahoma. But then Dante Moore is still going to visit Oregon, which I find interesting. Don't know why they would get both. I think Dante Moore probably wants to play right away. So my gut is Dante Moore goes to Michigan and plays next year. Could be wrong. But that's my gut feeling. I just want to bring that up. I just want to see if there's any news in the portal quick before we, cut this short. But I'm not seeing anything right now. Obviously, Manny Diaz is going to Duke, which I think is a good hire, coaching wise. But there's nothing else that I've seen
I think that's
today.
terrible for him
Really?
personally. Yeah, I think he's a super tough-minded defensive coordinator. That his defense requires a lot of attention, a lot of detail, and it's extremely complex blitz schemes. It's bringing guys from wherever, and you have to be super gap sound. And I think if you have a head coach that wants to implement that scheme, and he doesn't have like a direct descendant that knows how to coach that to the best of the ability, when you become a head coach, you're a CEO. You're not a project manager. You're not, the CFO. You're not only worried about financials. You're not like the CTO, the technical officer. You're not only worried about the tech side of things. Like you have to worry about everything, and your attention to detail has to be spread wide, like a net. And so I think some of these specialty coaches, you can look at, Lincoln Riley, where he doesn't give a shit about defense. He's worried about offense, and you can tell. You can tell that they don't care. They don't play with the aggression that you need to. They look like they're coached by an offensive, coach. And sometimes what you see is that when you have really good DCs, that take over head coaching jobs, the offense it just doesn't get the attention that it needs. It doesn't get the focus that it needs. It doesn't get the helpful hint and push by the coaching
Which
staff.
we
And
kind of
I
saw at Miami.
which we kind of saw at Miami, which I think they should have given him more time. And Cristobal doesn't have the opportunity to go there, blah 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 blah. And
Yeah.
maybe he learned, being under James Franklin, who I still think is a little bit of a
Not the
goofball.
best. Yeah, he is.
But it's something that I also think he had great athletes at Penn State. He
Yes.
got really great athletes to come. It's a prestigious university. Outside of the football team, there's a lot of known things about that. They get a lot of guys in Pennsylvania. I don't know how much Duke is going to be able to move the needle to get the athletes that he needs to run to put DBs on islands game after game, week after week, play after play. And so I'm just a little concerned that if you can't figure it out at Miami with all of those resources, how the hell are you going to figure it out at Duke? But that's to be said. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to him is he makes a buttload more money than he would have made as a DC, and then he can go back to being a DC for a really good defense 4 or 5 years from now. But still, I just don't think it's a weird fit for him to choose to do that at that school. Was kind of my opinion of the hire.
Yeah, I guess you. That's good. That's a good little 2 cents there. I just saw another name that committed in the portal. I just had to say his name, Hank Bachmeyer. I know I've talked about him with Promo Guy in the past. He was at Boise, Louisiana Tech. Now he commits to Wake Forest. So just another name to throw out there that committed. Yeah, keep your eyes out, everybody. We'll talk about the portal. Everything's kind of shaking out here. We have plenty of time till it closes. KB and I are both looking forward to the Bowl Mania here. I think games start Saturday. Like we said before, we're going to pick all the games straight up. Whoever wins, maybe the tiebreaker will do the national championship score if it's that close. Um,
Right.
and then loser pays the winner 100 bones. But as always, a good obviously a slower college football week, but a fun week with awards. Army Navy game as everybody loves to watch and talk about. And college football is almost done here, which is crazy to say. I'm optimistic once again with typical Dave here for Michigan State next season. So looking forward to that. But looking forward to the bowl games and having some fun with a little friendly wager with KB.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate everyone for listening. Continue to listen. Let your friends know. Let your family members know. Let your cousins, your sisters, your wives know. Because I think we're the best. We're the best guys around at this. No, I'm just kidding. But appreciate everything you guys do. Keep listening and go blue.
Go green, baby. We're a hockey school, not a basketball school. Remember that. See you guys.